Welcome back to Leveraging Leadership, where we unpack the art of business leadership. I'm your host, Emily Sander, Chief of Staff turned Executive Leadership Coach. I work with people to help them step into effective leadership and realize their professional and personal goals. If you have known failure and success, if you have had good bosses and bad bosses, if you are a high achiever and want new ideas, and if you want the practical and tactical side of things, then you are in the right place. This show is all about finding your points of greatest influence and leveraging them to better serve those around you. Welcome back. Have you ever been sitting at your computer and you finally have a block of time and you're doing some deep focus work and you're like, yes, I've been trying to get this done for a while now. It needs to be done. The team needs it. And here I'm working on it. And then someone knocks on your door and says, hey, can I talk to you for a second? Oh, and your brain goes, no. But the chief of staff, external part of you goes, of course, come on in. This episode is about how to be interruptible as a chief of staff. So part of your job as chief of staff is to be organized and to prioritize not only yourself, but help others prioritize. It's to make sure that you're spending most of your time in high value activities. It's about being deliberate with your time and having a plan. It's also about talking to people and having conversations and really listening and getting feedback and getting locked in and integrated with the different teams and departments. So there's these two things that are equal and they're working together, and there has to be a synergy between them. So apply judgment for when you lean into one versus the other. But I would say for me, it was very easy for me to be task oriented and I want to be productive today and I want to accomplish certain things. And sometimes it would feel like I'm screeching on the brakes and having to halt this thing that was in motion and momentum and then redirect all my energy to this person who has just shown up at my door and is asking for some time. But of course, those are really important conversations to have. You want to walk the walk when you say, hey, I have an open door policy. My door is actually open. And when you come in, I'm glad to see you. And I want to hear what you have to say because that's important. And so one of the things that I learned to do was, all right, when that happens, do a quick decision point. Is this one of those times when I need to tell someone, look, thank you so much for stopping by. I'm so interested in that topic. Could we meet in like half an hour? I'm just trying to wrap something up. Or, hey, I've committed that I'm going to get this project done for someone and I'm trying to get that done by end of day. But tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'm open. Do you happen to have time then? Because I really want to talk to you and give you my full attention. So it's a decision point about, do I redirect this or push this a little bit, but to a actual concrete time that we're going to meet? And do I express genuine interest in what they're saying? Not like, I'm going to be so bitter and resentful that you've actually come to talk to me, that you're never going to want to come to talk to me again. If not, if you're like, I really feel like doing this project, but you know what, it can wait and I do have time and I kind of know what this person is going to talk about and that is really important. Or it's like the first time someone's coming to speak to you, like, yes, of course, like I want to encourage this conversation and encourage this relationship, then you might want to take the time. So for me, it was literally closing or just lock screening my computer. So everything was locked. There weren't any sounds. I wasn't distracted by email or things that were coming on my screen. I would be able to give my full attention to the person in front of me. And then I would go through some mental prompts and say, all right, I need to lock into this part of being chief of staff. And again, they're not totally separate, but it's just kind of a different mode that you're in when you're talking collaboratively with someone. So I would just go through that really quick, and that was as quick as that in my head to like make that decision point and then get into the mode where I'm talking to someone. I'll tell you a quick story. So there was this gentleman who worked on one of our teams. And I knew who he was. I knew his name. I knew what team he worked on. I knew what role he played. I knew kind of generally how good he was at his job because the leader of that team would report out on how their team was doing. And he came, I didn't know him well though. So I knew his name and I would say hi to him in the hall, but I didn't really know him that well. And he came into my office one day and he kind of stood at the door frame and he gave a light knock and said, hey, Emily, can I talk to you? And I said, yes, come in. It was a good time. And we had this very short and kind of awkward chat. In my head, I was like, I'm not quite sure what we're talking about. I'm not quite sure what you're here, why you're here. I'm not quite sure what you want. Because I was like, what do you want? And I will be happy to try to get that to you. And he was just kind of a little bit guarded and kind of like looking at me and kind of testing me out. And then he left. And I was like, okay, well, that was a little bit odd, but okay, that happens. The second time he came back a few days later, knock, knock, knock. Hey, Emily, can I talk to you again? And this time I was like dead in the middle of something. I had just cleared my calendar. I had like put my focus lens on. I was deep into this thing. I was having to think about this thing deeply. I had multiple screens. And for the life of me, I was like, no, I don't have time to talk to you. I was just getting into the meat of this project that I've been trying to do for so long. But I said, Emily, you can meet with him right now. And this can wait, even though you're all in the middle of this and this is like screeching on the brakes and I have to redirect everything this way. So I said, yep, come on in, let's have a chat. And I did my best to kind of reorient myself. And we talked for a little bit longer this time. It was still kind of scattershot. I wasn't quite sure what it was, but he was like nodding his head a little bit more and he was leaning in and he was kind of listening to what I was saying and a little more open. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And then he kind of left abruptly. And I was like, all right, well, that was second conversation, but cool. About a week later, he came back a third time and he said, can I come in? I said, yes. He closed the door behind him. And I was like, that's different. He hadn't done that the first two times. And he sat down and we proceeded to have a conversation about something that was happening in his team. And it wasn't anything horrible or nefarious or bad, but it was something important that he was a little bit nervous to talk to someone about. And we had this conversation. And it was a great conversation. And it was a topic, it was something that I wanted and needed to know about as chief of staff. And it had some good downstream impacts in terms of subsequent conversations and actions that were taken. I often look back at that series of conversations, and especially that second one, I'm like, if I would have brushed him off, if I would have said no, would the third conversation and topic have transpired like it did? Would it have come up at all? Would it have been a different level of conversation? How would that have gone? Maybe it would have been fine if I said, look, I'm deep in the middle of this. Can I talk to you tomorrow? Maybe that would have been perfectly fine. But maybe, and I always think about this, maybe that would have deterred him, or maybe that would have pushed the conversation out for longer. And so that was just always a reminder to me of, Emily, be as interruptible as possible. So put yourself out there. If you say, I said, I have an open door policy. My door was actually open, but if I was grouchy and bitter and mean to you anytime someone walked through, that's not the impression I wanted to give. That's not the kind of relationships I wanted to have with people. I would proactively go, and if I had time or if I had a project where I could work on that in the lunchroom, I would just work on that in our shared cafeteria lunchroom area. If there was a day where I could go do work out in the cubicles amongst the team members, I would do that and just do the type of work I could do out on the floor. And I could overhear conversations. I could also overhear client conversations. And I could also have people like pop up like, hey, Emily, like, what are you doing over there? Like, oh, hey, like, what's going on with you? And just have those kind of casual one-off conversations. Okay, so be as interruptible as possible and put yourself in position so people can interrupt you. Now, there are obviously exceptions to this rule, and I had plenty of times where my door was closed and the do not disturb sign was on it, and that needed to be respected. And, if I'm terminating an employee, I don't want to be interrupted. If I'm talking to the finance team about the raise pools and who would get what and all this stuff, I'm not going to leave my door wide open for that kind of stuff. But use discernment, apply judgment. So keep the door closed and make sure you're not interrupted and you put up boundaries in those areas. But otherwise, allow yourself to be interruptible and put yourself in position to be interrupted. And those conversations can start small. It can literally be like small talk weather. It can just be hi in the hallway, and then it'll build to something more fruitful and more substantial. And those can be where you have really cool conversations with people and you get to know them and you get to know what they're about and all these different things and what their team is going through. So all this good stuff can come from that. So be interruptible. If you are sitting there going, all right, I'm a natural at being interruptible. I love when people stop by. I have no problem switching gears. Great. You do you and keep doing that. If this doesn't come as naturally to you and you're like, okay, how can I put myself in position to be interrupted more, then I'm happy to chat with you. If you're saying, all right, I need that mental prompt, like what's my mental prompt when I have to shift from deep focus work to on the fly talking to someone ad hoc as a one-off I wasn't planning. How do I get from there to there really, really quickly? I'm happy to talk to you about that as well. So in the link below in the show notes, you can jump on a free 30-minute clarity call with me and we can go through some of those ideas and get you some next steps in those areas. Otherwise, go forth, be good chiefs of staff, be good leaders, be interruptible, and I will talk to you next week on leveraging leadership.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.